YouTube has become for me kind of my outlet. It's my outlet to express myself. It's my outlet to clear my thoughts. It's my outlet to digest thoughts and things that are happening in my life. It's kind of enabled me to be like, this is like my own like diary thing, like Dear Diary, except like Dear YouTube. Kind of comforting in a way that I have a platform where I can just be very honest, and people would say like, oh, well, you're putting yourself out there and putting things on the internet, but for me, it's always kind of like been a weird thing. It's like I have no problem talking about things online and posting things out there for a lot of people to see, yet I think that can sometimes be more challenging to do in person, face to face with people. And I think that's something I need to work on, is being able to express myself, stand up for myself. In a very unanticipated way, my channel has also become a place where I feel like I'm starting to want to at least stand up for other people, especially as I started to do content related to the disability community. And that happened because I myself, someone with a hidden disability, was very badly mistreated at Disney World. And I wanted to start to talk about that, and that has, I think, enabled other people to come forward and feel freer in starting to feel that they too can discuss things that are occurring to them and in their lives. I just feel very burnt out. In Miami, things are very awry. Up is down, down is up. Things really don't make sense here. I know that's happening to a lot of places in the world, but Miami has always been kind of number one for that. Where nothing makes sense here. There's a lot I want to talk about on this channel, different videos. These are serious topics, and they're topics that, quite frankly, probably need videos in themselves. And I just want to like briefly start to touch on some of them. And yeah, there probably will be very detailed videos on some of these subjects that I'm going to start to like just, cleanse my brain of. There's a lot that I've been through, and there's a lot on my mind. Quite frankly, in the past, when I would start to mention some of these things, whether it was to someone in passing or a friend or a therapist, I was always met with, don't talk about these things. You don't want to have other people hear them or put that out there. People don't like to hear those things. And what I would end up realizing is a lot of the people that were telling me not to voice those opinions or say these things were people who, quite frankly, probably somewhere down the line didn't treat me very well either. And it was their way of silencing me and being, I guess, like a narcissist in a situation, and gaslighting how I was feeling and what was my truth. I've had a lot happen. I wasn't violated, but I was sexually harassed twice in my education years. Once in undergrad, the second time was in graduate school, and both were by professors. 2 separate universities. In both of those situations, I got through it. It was a doozy. It was very, very, very rough in both situations. One situation happened at FIU. The other happened at the University of Miami. In both of those situations, the school tried to cover it up, which they pretty much did. And I was kind of just stuck fending for myself, as most victims in those situations do. You're made out to seem like you're the crazy one. So-and-so is a distinguished professor. He would never say that. He would never do that. And that's exactly what happened in both of those situations. This may be shocking to some people, but I mean, when you Google that type of stuff at universities, unfortunately, it's pretty common. The schools don't like that type of stuff to get out. I'll probably do videos. The situations in both those circumstances was so intense, and there's so much information that I would need to do a video each in its own, which I'm willing to do, to start to delve into that and what happened in those situations and what that was like and what I went through. There is a ton of discrimination you go through living in Miami, and I can't say it's only in Miami. A lot of people have this misconception with Miami that we are this melting pot of ethnicities and diversities, and we're just so welcoming here. We have a ton of diversity in Miami, but quite frankly, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions, if you really ask them very, very honestly, no one gets along. No one gets along. We're not really a melting pot. There's huge diversity, but there's a huge amount of competition. There's always going to people would say, oh, there's always competition amongst people trying to get jobs and so like. But there's a huge amount of competition where people just here in Miami just don't seem to get along. There, in my opinion, is a lot of discrimination that does take place here in Miami, and I have personally experienced a lot of that when it comes to the hiring environment. I've had interviewers make comments about my appearance. I've had comments made to me about being Jewish, about race, and some of those are obviously areas that are protected. But again, you have to have the money in life to, choose what you're going to pursue in that type of manner. And it's usually best to probably just move on to something else. But I've had it happen a lot, honestly. Again, it's that constant left is right, right is left, up is down, down is up. And it's happened other places to me too. I had an experience in Colorado for that matter when I was living there briefly, and then I had reached out to them, a year or so ago, and I was just testing the waters on jobs there. And I reached out to one of the cities there to find out about openings or something like that with jobs, and they wrote back something on the level of we have an opening in the sewerage department or something like that. They had, when I lived in Colorado for a few years, because I'm from Miami, and I was there briefly for a few years, I did experience a ton of racism there. They seem to have some sort of fixation there with the Hispanic community and different stereotypes there. And it just seems to be something that they've never been able to get over in Colorado. For a state that is supposedly such a leader when it comes to liberal ideas and being very progressive, it's anyone who's ever visited Colorado or who has lived there is of diversity will tell you probably that they've had some pretty odd stories happen in Colorado where not everyone obviously, but there is a lot of stereotypical issues that are there. It was actually once a George Lopez show, if you're familiar with the George Lopez show, where there was an episode where I think he said it was actually based on an experience he had in Colorado, where in the episode he takes his family to Colorado and they are met with horrible rhetoric, and it's very on point with, unfortunately, a lot of what goes on there and what I've experienced personally there. But in general, unfortunately, I feel like whenever I voiced things that were on my mind, I've been met with a lot of gaslighting by people. And unfortunately, I think that when I would try to talk about these issues with other people and try to gain, feedback and, just have someone to talk to, I think I was honestly talking to narcissists that were then trying to gaslight me. And that's why I say, and I'm not saying that as a way to give a thumbs up to YouTube, that it really has become a platform for me where I'm able to digest my thoughts, get my thoughts out there, and then engage with a community out there of you guys who will comment, and you'll share your stories and you'll share things that have happened to you. And it really does become that platform of a community where you can talk to one another. I had actually in the past dabbled in seeking out therapists to just be able to talk about, general life issues and, social anxiety, and that type of stuff. And even I've heard from people finding a good therapist can be really hard. And the therapists here are honestly pretty terrible. I remember, I'll give you an example. So you're oh, give me an example. I went to a therapist, and this was in reference to dating, and I mentioned to her that I had met a guy that he was a professional. I'll give you context. So he was a doctor, and I said to her, I went out with him once. He just doesn't seem like a nice guy. And there were reasons he didn't seem like a nice guy. But her response, instead of just hearing you or not saying anything, was kind of a bizarre response. She was like, if he's a professional, he's probably a good guy. It's she's like, oh, well, if he's a professional, a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, he's probably, spent a long time trying to get to that place in life, and that would usually comes with good characteristics. And I'm like, there's a lot of lawyers that don't do good. There's a lot of doctors out there that do good. There's a lot of professionals out there that, are not nice people. I don't see how someone's career is indicative that they're a good person or not. You can have someone who's uneducated, for that matter, or didn't take the formal route and become something on a formal college route, and they're a good person. So her mindset was very strange. And this goes into like how everything is really messed up here in Miami. The reason she could have had that ideology anyhow, that was her beliefs. But she was someone, and again, this has to do with Miami specifically, who unfortunately came from, her family was her own personal family. Long time ago, I kind of knew her sister, and it was like, so that's how I knew this information on her, which obviously I probably shouldn't have sought out someone to talk to where I knew someone briefly in the family. But her family her father got involved with bad things, and he was a medical professional, and he was involved in a pretty well-known case. He went to jail. I'm pretty sure he lost his medical license, and he was not a good dude. Basically, she had a set of beliefs because of how she was influenced as in her youth. Her father was involved with things. He went to jail. So it was probably her own coping mechanism on how to look upon him. This rhetoric, even with her, continued on to other things. Like I would tell her, because I've mentioned in my previous videos that I used to live in a building, and the building manager was arrested for stealing all the money out of the building. This was a previous building I lived in, and that was a few years ago. And I remember when there was a lot of tension in my building, you just couldn't even like go into the lobby because this building manager, she would just like come at you anytime she could. And I would relay these stories to the therapist, and I would say, it's really hostile. You can't even like go to like a building meeting. You can't even like check your mail because this woman, and her attitude was immediately like, what did you do to her? Did you judge her? Did you make her feel bad about herself? It's like, well, the person was doing things that were not good, and they sensed that I was calling them out on that, and so they became tension. And it's rough when you just don't feel like you're believed. Like I get from her perspective, like maybe like the therapist, like she doesn't know, she wasn't there, she doesn't know, if you're just making it all up. But at the same time, it's like a lot of times I don't even find that people stay neutral. They just assume that you're judging or whatever with that. And it would be years later that that particular building manager would actually, be arrested. And then I get my, I've been validated. In today's world, we hear that term a lot, a Karen. And, yes, of course, and it specifically refers, I think, to women. But there are women out there that, are entitled, or they make a scene, or something is not appropriate in the way they are acting, and they get named a Karen. But you're also, especially for me, I found that anytime I speak up, I voice an opinion, I bring to light something that others don't want me to bring to light, you are immediately named a Karen. You can't, in today's society, it seems, disagree with anyone, form your own opinions, go against the grain, speak of something that doesn't seem right, or maybe like a social injustice issue, even if you're right. Even if there's other people out there that have been victimized, if you go out of the grain and you start talking about those things, you are named a Karen, because you can't speak today. You can't voice an opinion today. If that second definition, voicing your opinion and being there for others, is what gets you named that, then I'm okay with that. There's a lot of frustrations in Miami. It's kind of like one or the other. You either have people that are not doing that well financially, paycheck to paycheck, bottle service industry here, or you have the, in quote, appearing very wealthy people here. And usually those people can't express to you what they do for a living. I made a video once talking about that and the type of people you tend to encounter in Bow Harbor and the Bow Harbor shops. And I think I had people in the comments that were writing, I know a very successful businessman. Do you really want me to reply to those comments and be like, and how did they get started? How did they make money? They came to the country with the same old story that you've heard of I came to the country with $10 in my pocket, and a month later I was driving a Rolls Royce. We are missing how you got from point A to point B. And that has always been the ideology of Miami. And I think a lot of those people want you to aspire to be like them when you go against the grain and you say, but what exactly do you do for a living? I get that you are a successful businessman, but what do you do? And when you start to question those things and you're not just okay with keeping quiet, then once again, you are now this Karen that is once again pointing out things that they don't want pointed out. There's just so much that I want to start talking about, and I feel like it's all coming out at once. And it's all coming out at once because I feel like I've been silenced so much over the years by others, as well as my own internal voice, that now as I'm kind of spiritually growing and becoming more mature, it's all just coming out at once. And because of YouTube being this platform where I can express myself, everything is just coming out at once. And I guess this video is me saying that I'm going to start talking about a lot of these issues. You're going to see, of course, my videos on this channel where I'm funny and I'm comical and I do funny, silly things because I tend to mix it up on this channel. But there's also going to be videos like this where I am going to start to talk about some of these things that have happened, because I have seen in other videos that I've posted that a lot of people who are tuning into the channel are then finding it that they can then express themselves and start to talk about situations they have been through, and it becomes kind of like a coping mechanism for everyone to start having a place where they can share these thoughts. I want to create content regularly on this channel, and there are times where I get into a little bit of a rut, and I sit down with the camera and I'm saying to myself, I want to post and I want to be regular with my content, but I'm honest and authentic and saying I am just not in the mood right now to go out and film something comical. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm digesting thoughts. And what I realized recently, I would say, with my channel is that I can still create content by posting a video like this, where I start to talk about things that are authentically on my mind that I think might actually help others too. So if you watch this video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And feel free to comment any thoughts that, maybe this has, prompted you to want to talk about. But thank you guys so much for watching. I always appreciate when you do. And I will see you soon in my next video. And bye.